It's that time of year. No, not Thanksgiving. No, not Christmas time. No, it's Star Wars time.
Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. Give me the Star Wars, don't let them end.
Yes, as most of you know, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. More than that, I'm a huge fan of the prequels. In fact, I've already covered The Phantom Menace in previous episode of Second Look. Please check it out. But now it's time to move on to the follow-up, a movie that may actually be even more hated than The Phantom Menace, and a movie I actually really like. In this day and age, we are so quick to pronounce our love for a film or our hatred for it. But how do we know if that loving adrenaline rush can carry over to repeat viewing, or if our disdain is still justifiable? Well, we have to be willing to give every film a second look. As I often talk about on Second Look, story is a very important part of a movie, and despite some of the dialogue maybe not being the best,
I don't like sand.
No, I'll get to that later, Lucas actually developed a really interesting story about seeing the events that push a good person towards evil. And he did this as the backdrop of a war beginning to take place. A lot of people often complain about the political discussions in the prequels, saying that they drag the films down. And, well, I disagree. I find, particularly in this film, the political stuff to be really interesting. Maybe that's due to me being a bit of a history buff and having a small obsession with World War II, but I like how Lucas shows the beginning steps of a democratically elected official twisting the system for his own nefarious means. Palpatine is pulling pretty much every string he can in the film, whether it be his friendship with Anakin, the Senate, and even the Jedi. I find this to be a lot more interesting than the story of a villain who just strong-arms his way into having an empire. But of course, Lucas also chooses to focus on a forbidden romance in the film. Anakin and Padme's relationship in Attack of the Clones is nothing like Han and Leia's in Empire. Han and Leia's only restriction to falling in love was them both getting over the fact that they wanted the other. Anakin and Padme, however, they have a lot of obstacles in their way. Lucas was always mining old stories when making the Star Wars films, and I can't help but see the influence of love stories like Romeo and Juliet or Robin Hood and Maid Marian. Two people who are separated by either class, family, and so on, who still find a way to fall in love. I know that romance is not everyone's cup of tea, but, well, I don't know what to say, except I like it. But perhaps that has to do with the characters. There are a lot of characters, and I can't cover them all. So instead, I want to focus on our three heroes and our primary villain. When I watch Attack of the Clones, I can't help but look at Padme and say, yeah, this woman being Leia's mom really tracks. Disagree with me all you want, but I think Lucas did a great job in this film, infusing Leia into Padme. By that I mean the two characters are very similar. Both are kind and caring, both want to handle things diplomatically, but when it comes down to it, they're able to kick ass. Padme, however, does differ from her future daughter. I think the biggest difference is Padme much prefers diplomatic solutions over violent ones. I mean, she's the head of the committee against the act to create an army for the Senate. Seeing your home be overrun by, for lack of a better term, warlords, I think would definitely change a person's view on war. But what makes Padme so great is when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, she is more than ready to fight for what she believes in. I know my show is often full of quote-unquote hot takes. Well, here's another one for you. I believe that Attack of the Clones is Obi-Wan's shining moment.
You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you.
I'll talk about you next month. Now, why do I say this? Well, it really comes down to the fact that Attack of the Clones is the movie where Obi-Wan has the most effect on the plot. In the other movies, for the most part, he's kind of just going with the flow of the story. But in Clones, he's the one driving the plot.
Blast, this is why I hate flying.
After the attempt on Padme's life, Obi-Wan begins a search to find who the would-be killer was. And this search brings him to Kamino, where he learns firsthand about the clone army. He meets Jango Fett, who he then tracks to Geonosis, where he then spies on Dooku and the Separatists, and learns of their plan to start a war, as well as discovering Droid Factory. And it's his capture that brings all the characters to Geonosis for the final act. I mean, Obi-Wan really does shine in this film, and Ewan McGregor, of course, plays it so well. And I think my favorite scene of his might be when he meets Jango Fett.
Ever made your way as far into the interior as Coruscant?
Once or twice,
Recently?
possibly.
These looks between the two characters are perfect, because they both know who the other one is. Obi-Wan really is a standout for me in Clones, and hopefully next time you watch the film, you'll agree with me. This is my favorite Anakin Skywalker.
What?
Oh, I suppose you want me to go into more detail. I think I like this version of Anakin in a similar way to me like in the version of Luke we get in Empire. Both characters are heroic, but are each struggling with darkness inside them. I like conflicted characters, and that's Anakin in Attack of the Clones. I think a lot of it comes down to this moment.
To be angry is to be human.
I'm a Jedi. I know I'm better than this.
I mean, that line says so much, almost like being a Jedi means you have to suppress your very human emotions in order to be a hero. And that's very hard for a character like Anakin to do. This film also builds upon a character trait in Anakin presented in The Phantom Menace, which is he struggles with letting things go, particularly loved ones. We saw in Phantom Menace Anakin losing Qui-Gon, and in this film we see him lose his mother. But what I love is Lucas has Anakin wishing that his Jedi training could have somehow changed this outcome to be more favorable, very similar to Clark Kent.
All those things I can do. All those powers. And I couldn't even save him.
Which perfectly sets up the character for his story in Revenge of the Sith. Okay, but you all want me to talk about the sand line. He says it in response to Padme, who's talking about her life on Naboo, where she'd swim in beautiful waters and then lie out on the sand. Anakin was born into slavery, on a planet that is nothing but sand. And hearing about the woman he loves having this wonderful life where sand was this comforting thing, compared to his life where the sand was a constant reminder of the coarse and unending life of a slave. Maybe people should give more credit to Lucas as a writer.
And to be fair, I did say to George, George, you can type this but you can't say it. And that's the year he gets nominated for an Oscar for Best Screenplay.
Count Dooku is a really interesting villain when you compare him to the others in the series, mostly due to the fact that Lucas didn't present him as the main antagonist right off the bat. Even when Padme thinks Dooku is behind the first attempt on her life, Dooku's referred to as more of a political idealist. In a lot of ways, Dooku is a lot like a John Adams or a Ben Franklin, someone who doesn't agree with the government and wishes to form his own. Even in the scene when Obi-Wan is captured, Dooku isn't being mustache-twirling about it. He instead wants to help Obi-Wan, and tells him that a Sith Lord is in the Senate, which we find out in the next film to be 100% true. Dooku stands as one of the more interesting villains, because for most of the film, he's not the straight-up bad guy. If it isn't clear, I love this film, and I do genuinely mean love it. Attack of the Clones is one of those movies that whenever I watch it, I'll sit during the credits thinking about the great adventure I've just been on. Clones works for me on so many levels. It has a great main character that's conflicted, an interesting villain, and an old school romance that we don't really get to see in movies. but Lucas wraps it up in a great Star Wars package by giving us some great action sequences, humorous moments, and sets it all in that galaxy that is so accessible to any viewer. If you're someone who dislikes Attack of the Clones and refuses to revisit it, I hope that for nothing else, this video makes you want to go back and give Attack of the Clones that second look.